Chapter 490. Even if it's a pre-celestial expert, in the face of such a lineup, they certainly won't get any advantage. However, Dr. Wang and his medicine boy's triumphant expression hasn't fully blossomed on their faces when they suddenly freeze. Bang bang bang. From time to time, they hear the sound of fists hitting flesh, as well as men's screams of love. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. After a short time to drink a cup of tea. Those fiendish guards of the Ghost Wind Valley are lying on the ground, none of them can stand up. And there's only one person who has knocked them down. That black-clothed handsome youngster, Ying Mai. You, who are you people? The Ghost Wind Valley guard angrily questions. He also holds the signal flare in his hand. Didn't I tell you? I'm a doctor, invited to treat the Ghost Lord. Mu Yang slowly steps forward, smiling as she looks at the guards of the Ghost Wind Valley. Her beautiful face and bright smile make the guard's mind go into a trance for a moment. Then he immediately says in a loud voice, "No, impossible. The people invited to treat the Ghost Lord this time are all famous senior doctors and pharmacists in the Yenwu continent. You're just a little girl, how could you have such superb medical skills? You don't believe in my medical skills?" Muyan sneers and crooks her finger at Dr. Wang. "Why don't I demonstrate it to you on the spot?" At this moment, pure fear surges in Dr. Wang's heart. He turns around to run. However, he hasn't run 2 steps. As if he's being pulled by an invisible force. He can't help but fall back. His face shows a horrified expression. What did you do? Why can't I control my body? Muyan, who originally wanted to catch him by herself, turns to look at the man standing next to her. She can't help but curl up her lips into a smile. Seeing that he can't break free, Dr. Wang's face suddenly shows a vicious expression. Suddenly, he turns around. He raises his left hand high, clenches his fist, and a green light flashes. He shouts, "Go to hell." With a wave of his hand, green powder, accompanied by a fishy smell, diffuses out. But Dr. Wang also wails at the same time. His hand, which was holding the green powder, was broken at the wrist. The hand that fell to the ground was stained with blood and dirt, but it was still gently bouncing, looking especially terrifying. Dr. Wang held his broken hand and rolled on the ground, screaming like a pig being slaughtered. Mu Yang slowly walked forward, picked up the severed hand, and came to Dr. Wang. Those Ghost Wind Valley's guards were also so shocked by this scene that their faces turned green and pale. What do you want to do? Behaving atrociously in my Ghost Wind Valley, are you really not afraid of the Ghost City's kill order? Mu Yang tilted her head slightly and smiled, her voice pleasant to the ear. Didn't you question whether I have the ability to treat the Ghost Lord? I have to prove it to you. As she spoke, she grabbed Dr. Wang's severed hand. He picked up the bloody hand from the ground and placed it on the wound. What are you doing? Dr. Wang came to his senses and screamed in pain, "Don't do anything stupid. You were hit by my heart-piercing powder just now. If you don't have the antidote, you will die without a burial." Chapter 491. You must be kidding. Dr. Wang screamed, "My hand is broken. You cut it off. How can it be healed? I've been practicing medicine for decades, but I've never heard of such medical skills. Let me go." Mu Yang no longer pays attention to him. She aimed at the palm and wrist, took out a needle and thread, and began to suture. Without anesthesia and conscious, she directly sutured the tendons and flesh. This kind of pain was simply indescribable. The whole Ghost Wind Valley echoed with Dr. Wang's miserable screams like a pig being slaughtered. In the end, he didn't even have the strength to scream anymore. He only begged, "This old man was wrong, I was wrong, please let me go, it hurts, I really can't stand it, boo-hoo." At this moment, Mu Yang finally cut off the thread and showed a satisfied smile. "Okay, the suture is done." The Ghost Wind Valley's guards regained their senses one by one from their shocked faces. You can't be thinking that sewing severed limbs together like that is considered medical skill, right? Mu Yang slowly raised her eyebrows. She turned her hand, and a porcelain bottle appeared in her hand. She slowly poured the medicine in the porcelain bottle onto Dr. Wang's hand. Then, a shocking scene happened. They saw that the bloody wound on Dr. Wang's hand, which was sewn with thread, began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Mu Yang pulled off the suture rope while pouring the draught. After a few breaths, there was only a centipede-like scar left on Dr. Wang's wrist. Dr. Wang widened his eyes and looked at his hand in disbelief. Then, he subconsciously moved his fingers. It moved. The fingers moved. How is it possible? How can a broken hand be sewn back together, and how can it be as good as before? Dr. Wang looked at Mu Yang in shock, and then looked at his hand. There seemed to be that terrible pain on his wrist. However, when he crooked his finger, he really felt the existence of his hand. Moreover, as time went by, the existence of this hand became stronger and stronger. It was as if it had never been looked at before. No, impossible. How can there be such medical skills in the world? Moreover, the one who used such medical skills was a young girl who was not even 20 years old. Dr. Wang raised his head and stared at Mu Yang. His voice was trembling. You. Who are you? Session 2, you've come. Why are you standing here and not going in? Inside the Ghostwind Valley, an old man cried out in surprise. He sees Magistrate Liu striding forward to welcome Mu Yang, repeatedly bowing to invite her in, his expression indescribably respectful and flattering. Shen 2. The Ghostwind Valley guards were all dumbfounded. What Shen 2 meant, they all knew. However, the Ghost City hasn't had a Shu for a long, long time. Why did it suddenly appear now? And such a young girl at that. Magistrate Liu, who is this lady? Finally, one of the guards could not help but say, although she has an invitation, her name is not recorded here, so we dare not let her in. Idiot. Hearing this, Magistrate Liu wished he could slap this second pig-like teammate to death. Having Shu Fu in the Ghost City is not enough. Chapter 492. Don't you know who she is? Magistrate Liu hatefully says, you guys don't know who the new Shinshudaran of the Ghost City is, but you guys should have heard of the Enchantress of Medicine from Chenyuan City, the one who even the King of Hell can't take his life. The Enchantress. The first one to cry out in alarm was Dr. Wang. You're the Enchantress of Medicine from Chenyuan City who is said to be able to bring the dead back to life. Yes. Didn't this young lady's medical skills bring the dead back to life? Magistrate Liu ignored him and continued, even if you haven't heard of the Enchantress of Medicine, you should have heard of the Godly Tear Alchemist, right? More than half of the top-notch drafts sold in the Ghost City today are refined by this Miss June. Have you eaten a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? How dare you doubt her identity and block her from entering? If you delay the treatment of the Ghost Lord, I'm afraid that even if you have 10 lives, it won't be enough to compensate for it. As soon as he said that, Dr. Wang's body swayed and he fell to the ground with a thud. The faces of the Ghostwind Valley's guards turned pale with fright as they knelt down. How could they have thought of that? The Enchantress of Medicine who could bring the dead back to life. The godly alchemist whose drafts can be sold at sky-high prices in the Ghost City. It was actually this young girl who looked no more than 18 or 19 years old. Listening to Magistrate Liu's incessant flattery, watching the guards continuously kowtow and beg for mercy. Mu Yang's expression is indifferent. She gently patted off the mud and blood on her hands. The bloodstains had dried up and could not be wiped off. She was about to give up. However, her hand was suddenly grabbed by someone. A soft and slightly damp handkerchief covered her hand and gently wiped it. Soon, the bloodstain was wiped clean. Mu Yang subconsciously raises her head to look at Di Mingju's cold and handsome face. Unexpectedly, she met the man's bottomless eyes. It was filled with his own reflection. Mu Yan's heart skips a beat, and she subconsciously withdraws her hand. Only after a long while does she manage to calm down. She coughed lightly to hide her beating heart. He looks at Magistrate Liu with a sneer. I just want to know one thing. This guard said that I'm not on the list of invited doctors. May I ask if the Ghost City doesn't want to cooperate with me from now on? Or, does the Ghost City have a problem with me? Since you have a problem with me, why don't you not force me to cooperate with you? After saying that, she turned around without any reluctance. Then I'll see you again. Oh, no, I mean never again. No, Miss Jun, it's not like that. Listen to me, this is a misunderstanding, really a misunderstanding. Muyin makes a move to leave, as if there's no room for maneuver this time. But at this moment, she heard a hoarse voice. Enchantress, please wait. Mu Yang pauses and slowly turns around. Not far away, a tightly wrapped person with a mask on his face slowly walked over. It was impossible to tell whether he was a man or a woman. As he gets closer, Muyin's entire heart starts to beat faster. Her body's instinctive reaction to danger made every nerve in her body tense up. This person was very strong. His cultivation was even higher than his own. Moreover, that kind of strength was not only because his cultivation had reached the peak of the innate realm. Furthermore, it was because his body was emitting a sinister and strange aura. This kind of aura was somewhat similar to the Poison Man Enforcer Li that Chen Qing had trained. However, he was far stronger than Protector Li. Chapter 493. Unlike the last time they met, the ugly white spots on Shalanling's face had disappeared without a trace. Her appearance was even more beautiful than before the white jade violet frost had dispersed. Seeing Muyin, Shalanling clenches her teeth, her eyes are filled with resentful murderous intent. However, Mu Yang didn't even bother to give her a single glance out of the corner of her eyes. Instead, she stared fixedly at the person who was tightly wrapped up and wearing a mask. This person slowly walked out of the Ghost Wind Valley. The cold and gloomy aura of the Ghost Wind Valley seemed to wrap around his body. This caused his originally sinister and treacherous aura to become even more uncomfortable. I've long heard of the Enchantress of Medicine's great name. I'm Ghost King Liu Se of Half Moon City's Ghost City. Liu Se. Mu Yang's pupils suddenly contract. Could it be the Liu Se that she had heard of in her previous life? She really didn't expect that Gong Qianshue's hand had already stretched so far. Not only Jingcheng country, even the ghost city of Huang Yarou country has already become something in her pocket. From the looks of it, today's treatment of the Ghost King was probably a real trap. Mu Yang slowly narrows her eyes, subconsciously reaching out to grab something. If she was alone, she would not be afraid. But Xiaobao was in her space. If anything were to happen to her, Xiaobao would be exposed in front of others and be harmed. This was something she would never allow to happen. Her small hand, which she had stretched out in panic, was suddenly held by a warm and wide hand. The man's body slowly approaches, his deep voice faintly echoing in her ears. Don't be afraid, Yang Yang. I will always be by your side. As soon as she finished speaking, Liu Se's body suddenly stiffened, and she even took a step back. A pair of cold and severe eyes sweep over Muyin and Di Mingju. A look of shock and fear appeared on his face. Tightly pressed against his body, Mu Yang can clearly feel Di Mingju's body temperature, his heartbeat, as well as his unique aura. The last bit of uneasiness in his heart disappeared without a trace at this moment. Yes, she still has Di Mingju. She, Xiaobao, and Di Mingju. After that, her thoughts suddenly stopped, and she was slightly vexed and dazed. Since when did she start to trust and rely on this man so much? She had clearly sworn that in this life, the most important things to her were only Xiaobao and revenge. Before her vengeance was over, she would never be tainted by such an unstable factor as feelings. Muyin takes a deep breath and breaks free from Di Mingju's hand, resuming her usual calm and languid self. Since it was her own hatred, of course, she had to do it herself. The corner of his mouth hooks up into a shallow arc. Ghost City's long-awaited method is to repeatedly ignore my sincerity and play me for a fool? This one can't accept such an honor. I think whatever Shenshu, whatever cooperation, just forget about it in the future. After saying that, he pretended to leave. Liu Se didn't expect her to leave so decisively. He could not help but frown. Wait a moment. Liu Se promptly opens her mouth to call out to Muyin, today's matter, it was my Ghost Wind Valley that handled matters improperly. I ask Miss Jun to not take offense. Your name was accidentally deleted by Shishenzi. Shishenzi, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and apologize to Miss June. You want me to apologize to this, to her? Shalanling screamed in disbelief. However, Liu Se's cold gaze swept over Chapter 494. She fiercely glares at Mu Yang, her face twisted with resentment, but in the end, she still clenches her teeth and says, It's my fault, Miss Jun, please don't take offense. Mu Yan looks at her with a smile that isn't a smile. I'm sorry, Shixianzi, I don't see the sincerity in your apology. Shilanling's face turns from white to green, green to purple, purple to black. In the end, she can only stiffen her body and salute Mu Yan. I was wrong, I ask Miss Jun to forgive me. The guards of the Ghost Wind Valley, as well as Dr. Wang and his medicine boy, all widened their eyes. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. These two, one is the Ghost King of Huangyaro Country's Ghost City, the other is the only one in the Ghost City who can do alchemy, Shixianzi. But now, for the sake of a young lady, he had to lower himself to apologize. This Enchantress, could it be that her medical skills were really that terrifying? The draft that she refined, could it really be that miraculous? Even the medicinal pills that Shixianzi refined could not compare to hers. Of course, Shilanling also felt the probing and pitiful gazes of the people around her. She has such a high and lofty status in the Ghost City. When and where has she ever suffered such humiliation? At this moment, he really wishes he could pounce over and dismember that slut Jun Mu Yan into 1,000 pieces. However, she had no choice but to endure it. Calm and unruffled, Mu Yang watches Shilanling's joke for a long time. Since Shixianzi apologizes so sincerely, then I'll accept it. It's just that Shixianzi made such a low-level mistake time and time again. It really makes me doubt. With your IQ, can you really refine pills to save people? Don't tell me that you messed up the main ingredients when you were refining the pills. Or let me make a bold guess, because of Shixianzi's improper treatment, the Ghost King is now beyond cure. Hehe, if that's the case, the Ghost King is really too pitiful. Mu Yang's words sound like a joke, but the guards of the Ghost Wind Valley uniformly look towards Shilanling. A few of the guards had suspicious looks on their faces. Shilanling's face was already purple. After hearing these words, she felt her vision go black. Her body swayed, and she almost fainted. Jun Mu Yan, this slut. She must kill her immediately. After insulting Shilanling enough, Mu Yan enters the Ghost Wind Valley under the invitation of Ghost King Liu Se. The Nether Hall in the Ghost Wind Valley is divided into inner and outer halls. The seriously ill Ghost King is currently recuperating in the inner hall. All the doctors must stay in the inner hall. But the entourage is not allowed to enter the inner hall, so they can only stay in the outer hall. Liu Se's pair of eyes behind the mask faintly look towards Mu Yan. Miss Jun, surely you wouldn't mind? Mu Yan hasn't said anything yet, but Ying Mai and Han Yi are already anxiously saying, how can this be? Miss Jun, you are alone, if there is any danger. Hee, our Ghost Wind Valley sincerely invites Miss Jun to treat the Ghost Lord's illness. How could there be any danger here? Shilanling sneers, her gaze drifting towards Mu Yan is brimming with disdain and provocation, or could it be that Miss Jun doesn't even have this little bit of courage, and needs someone to accompany her in order to dare to stay in the Ghost Wind Valley? Mu Yan slightly raises her long eyebrows, stopping Han Yi and the others from protesting. What was to come would come. Running away and retreating was not her style. She really wants to see why Shilanling and Liu Se insist on separating her and Di Mingju's trio. In the end, what do they want to do? Chapter 495. However, this glance makes her heart sink slightly, because this is the first time she looks at Di Mingju. But Di Mingju is looking at another woman, Shilanling. The rooms that the Ghost Wind Valley provides for doctors can be said to be very luxurious. The furnishings inside are incomparably extravagant, everything that should be there is there. Every room was also equipped with 4 beautiful, witty, and intelligent little girls. Mu Yang waves her hand to dismiss them. After making sure that there's no one around to spy on them, she flashes into the space. Nyangqin. Xiao Bao throws himself into her arms, his little raised face full of attachment. Nyangqin, Xiao Bao has been cultivating properly. The fat rabbit also hops a couple of times, letting out a howl. I've also been cultivating properly. Mu Yang reveals a soft smile, patting Xiao Bao's head, and then the fat rabbit. Nyangqin is going to refine an elixir now. Keep an eye on it for Enchanting, and if anyone comes near, alert Enchanting. Xiao Bao nods heavily. Holding the fat rabbit, he sits next to Mu Yang, but his attention is completely focused outside the space. Mu Yang takes out the furnace and ignites the pill fire. This time, she wants to refine an elixir that can restrain the yin energy in the Ghost Wind Valley. From the moment she entered the Ghost Wind Valley, she felt strands of cold yin energy eroding her veins. It might be nothing for a short period of time, but after a long time. If the yin energy becomes a bit stronger, she's afraid that it will have a bad effect on her. Once she absorbs too much yin energy, the space will also be nibbled away by the yin energy. Of course, Mu Yang won't allow such a thing to happen. The sound of the zither slowly rises, and the pill fire in the furnace burns even more vigorously. After a long time, 6 elixirs finally take shape. It's different from the last elixir that spread its fragrance for thousands of miles and alarmed countless creatures. The 6 elixirs this time are very ordinary. Mu Yang gives one each to Xiao Bao and the fat rabbit. She then swallows one herself. Xiao Bao obediently swallows the elixir, then looks at Mu Yang. He hesitates for a moment before saying, "Enchanting, are you unhappy?" Mu Yang stares blankly. She's unhappy. Why not? Just because Defying saw another woman? She frowned, stroked little Bao's head, and pulled out a smile. "Baby, don't worry, mother isn't unhappy. I'm just wondering if I should give Han Yi and Ying my an elixir as well." Hearing this, little Bao immediately nodded. "Yes." Xiao Bao feels that after eating the medicinal pill, my body no longer feels cold and uncomfortable. Mother is so amazing. Xiao Bao's Enchanting is so awesome was purely because of his unwarranted worship and trust towards Muyin. However, if other people in the Ghost Wind Valley knew about this kind of medicinal pill, they would probably be so shocked that their jaws would drop. After all, what was the most frightening thing about the Ghost Wind Valley? It wasn't the powerful guards inside, but the poison smog that could corrode one's lungs. Without the corresponding antidote, just inhaling a certain amount of poison smog would cause one's entire body to go limp and unable to resist. This was also the reason why even innate realm experts could enter the Ghost Wind Valley. They might not even be able to get out of here alive. The poison smog of the Ghost Wind Valley has existed for hundreds of years, and it has also been studied for hundreds of years. However, no one outside of the Ghost City has ever been able to crack it. But at this very moment, Muyin was able to refine an elixir that could restrain the poison smog, just based on the poison smog that her body came in contact with. Chapter 496. Mu Yang hesitated for a while, but still quietly left the room and headed out of the hall. At this time, the sky was completely dark. The door to the room was gently pushed open, but it was dark and empty inside. Defying isn't in the room. Mu Yang frowned slightly. At this hour, if Defying isn't in the room, where would he go? However, since he's not here, she doesn't stay any longer. She turns around and heads towards Ying Mai and Han Yi's room. In fact, she also knows that Defying's body is special. Ghost Wind Valley's poison smog, he probably did not care about it at all. However, before she could go out, suddenly, footsteps and voices came from outside the door. Hearing the familiar voice, Mu Yang stopped in his tracks and subconsciously hid behind the screen. "Emperor, don't walk so fast. Lanling can't keep up with you." The door to the room was pushed open and the candle was lit. Then, Lanling's coquettish voice, which sounded like she was pinching her throat, clearly came from the room. Mu Yang subconsciously clenched her fists and pursed her lips into a line. It wasn't because of Lanling's affected voice. Instead, she hears another familiar breathing and footsteps. That's Defying's. Her figure instantly became faintly discernible. His aura was completely restrained in the space. If there were no energy fluctuations, no one would be able to detect her presence if they didn't look carefully. Muyin tilts her body slightly to the side and looks through the gap of the carved and hollowed-out wooden screen. He could vaguely see the figures of a man and a woman. Defying sits on a chair, slowly turning the teacup in his hand. Under the candlelight, his handsome and elegant face appeared to be dazzling and unattainable. Shilanling was standing not far away, staring at his face in a daze. It was as if it longed to get closer, but was afraid to do so. Emperor Di, have you considered the matter that Lanling suggested to you just now? Di Mingju looks at the teacup in his hand, his expression cold and detached. He doesn't answer. Shilanling seemed to be completely unaware of his coldness. She continued to stare at him foolishly and said, Di Jun, you're not a person from the Yenwu continent. I'm afraid you should be from that Shozhen continent that everyone yearns for, right? Everything in this Yenwu continent, whether it's people or objects, Di Jun naturally wouldn't put them in your eyes. Step by step, she slowly approaches Di Mingju. The pressure from the man's body made it hard for her to breathe. But it also makes her more and more amazed, infatuated, and longing for it. Di Jun must have come to the Yenwu continent to ask for something. That Jun Muyin is merely a mortal woman who has a child and has long lost her innocence. However, the emperor condescends to keep her by his side. Presumably, it's because that woman has something that the emperor desires, right? His heart seemed to be squeezed tightly in an instant. Muyin stares unblinkingly at the man's expression. However, the man's expression did not change at all. It was as if she had heard something unimportant. Then, he casually looked at Shilanling. Oh. Then tell me, what is Ben Jun's scheme? Hearing Di Mingju's question, Shilanling's eyes immediately brighten. An ecstatic look flashed across his face. What Liu Se said was right. For such a powerful man to want a broken shoe like Jun Muyin, it's really because he's plotting something from her. Moreover, she also knows that the bastard simply isn't Di Mingju's. Chapter 497. If that's the case, Di Jun simply doesn't really like Muyin. He just wanted to use her. Shilanling suppressed the surging desire in her heart, and the expression on her face became more and more coquettish. Her skin was covered with white spots just a few days ago. At this moment, however, it had become fair and transparent, like a fine piece of jade. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that her skin was so thin that it seemed as if it would break at any moment. It was sparkling and translucent, and it was somewhat unusual. Di Jun, the reason why you value Jun Muyin so much should be because she has a pre-celestial holy body that's rarely seen in 10,000 years, right? Cultivating yin-yang dual cultivation with such a woman will be several times more effective, be it in terms of cultivation or healing. Even if Jun Muyin has already lost her purity and no longer has a pure yin constitution, she is still a rare furnace in this world. Emperor, do you think Lanling is right? Di Mingju slowly raises his head, his eyes faint. You only know this. Shilanling stares blankly, not understanding what Di Mingju's words mean. Then she heard the man's cold voice. Or, should I ask, who told you these words? Who planted the golden silkworm Gu in your body? Shilanling's expression changed. She forced herself to be calm and said, what is the Emperor Lord saying? Lanling doesn't understand. Lanling represents Ghost City and hopes to cooperate with Di Jun. His throat was clutched by a steel-like hand, tightening bit by bit. The air in his body was squeezed out bit by bit. Shilanling's complexion turned green and purple, her eyes filled with panic and fear. Emperor, spare my life. It's King of Hell, Liu Se, let me. His throat was released, and a large amount of cold air was poured into his throat. Shilanling coughed violently. At this very moment, besides adoration, there's also a bit of fear in her eyes as she looks at Di Mingju. Trembling with fear, she says, Di Jun, it was Ghost King Liu Se who sent me to find you. I hope that you can cooperate with the Ghost City. As long as you don't stop and don't intervene in what happens next, all of the Ghost City's resources will be at your disposal. Whatever you want to find in the Yenwu continent, the Ghost City can find it for you. Ghost King also guaranteed that as long as she sits on the throne of the Ghost King, she will be even more respectful to you than Guu. In fact, Shilanling said, blushing slightly. He slowly reached out and took off his coat. Her snow jade-like shoulders, half-covered breasts, and her lithe body, which was only wearing a thin inner garment, were exposed. In fact, if you want Lanling, Lanling is willing to offer my body to you. Although Lanling doesn't have the innate saint physique, she has the rare heavenly yin female physique. Moreover, compared to Jun Muyin, Lanling is still a virgin. If the emperor is willing, Lanling is willing to devote myself to you. Even if it's as a slave or a concubine, or even as a cauldron, as long as it's for the emperor, Lanling is willing. Saying that, she shyly and expectantly looks at Di Mingju, her eyes filled with deep affection. The man in front of her was like a god, aloof and incomparably handsome. Even in the cultivation continent, such a man would surely be supreme. How could a small Yenwu continent hold Lanling's ambition? As long as she could dedicate herself to such a man, even if she had to be a slave, a concubine, or even a cauldron, so what? She can follow him, leave the Yenwu continent, and henceforth become incomparably noble. That was the life that belonged to her. Chapter 498. Lanling's heart is getting hotter and hotter. Slowly, with a seductive gesture, she put her hand in front of her chest. Little by little, she pulls off her clothes. Until the snow-white, alluring body is revealed under the flickering candlelight. Di Jun, Lanling is ready for you to pick. Don't you want it, Di Jun? She uses the softest voice to say the most sticky and coquettish words, step by step walking towards Di Mingju. The man's gaze on her body doesn't fluctuate in the slightest. It's like looking at a dead thing, a pile of trash. Lanling's heart sinks, then she tries even harder to twist her delicate body, taking off the remaining clothes on her body bit by bit. Your Majesty, let Lanling serve you. In the darkness, Muyin's expression turns a little cold. Her heart, which was originally opening up bit by bit because of Di Mingju's protection and companionship, is once again sealed up at this moment. It's like a thick layer of ice has condensed on the outside, never to be opened to anyone again. Only the strands of pain in her heart, like it's being cut by a knife, reminds her. Once, she was almost moved by this man, moved by emotions. Muyin's mind is completely calm, thinking about how she should quietly get away when the two of them are deep in passion. But at this moment, there's the sound of a violent impact. Muyin stares blankly. Looking out through the gap in the screen, she sees the two people who should be embracing each other intimately. Right now, only Di Mingju is left standing in the room. And Lanling's entire body has already flown out, smashing through the door and landing heavily outside the room. The violent noise wakes up the guests and guards in the outer hall. Everyone follows the sound and comes over, only to see a naked Lanling lying in the grass, her face lifeless and incredulous. What happened? This, isn't this Shishenzi? Oh my, how could Shishenzi not even wear a single piece of clothing? And just now, didn't she fly out of that room? Along with all kinds of voices, there's also those gazes that fall on her naked body, whether it's passion, or disgust, or gloating. Everything caused her mind to go blank, and she was unable to think. Why? Why did things turn out like this? Wasn't she offering herself to Di Mingju just now? Wasn't she about to successfully seduce this man? Why did she fall from heaven to hell in the blink of an eye? My lord, what happened? Han Yi and Ying Mai hurriedly rush over. Seeing Lanling lying naked in front of Di Mingju's door, they reveal a disgusted expression. Why is it this woman again? Han Yi snappily says, Shishenzi, don't you have any shame? My family's Jun Shong has long said that he doesn't fancy you. Moreover, my family's Jun Shong already has a wife. You repeatedly run over to offer yourself as a pillow, aren't you a bit too thick-skinned? I didn't expect that Shishenzi, who is as noble and pure as a lotus on the surface, is actually such a debauched person in private. TSK. She offered herself as a pillow, yet she was kicked out. If this matter were to spread, I'm afraid that Fairisha's reputation in the future, what Shishenzi? What a shameless whore. In the past, Lanling used her holy and noble identity to guide public opinion and destroy many women she disliked. Chapter 499. However, she had never imagined that one day, she would become the target of public criticism. Frantic screams accompanied Shalanling's frantic dash as she covered her face and gradually faded into the distance. After today, Shixianzi, who was once sought after by everyone, can be considered to have been completely pulled down from the altar. Everyone laughed and left. The door was slowly closed, and the candles in the room were extinguished. The room fell into endless darkness and silence. Mu Yang's figure slowly withdraws from the space, quietly arriving at the open window. Just as she was about to jump out of the window and leave, a scorching aura suddenly wrapped around her. His steel-like arms wrapped around her waist and restrained her tightly. The man's deep voice rang in his ears, "Since Mu Yang is here, how can he bear to leave so quickly?" Mu Yang's breathing stagnates, but her expression soon returns to normal, and she slowly turns around. "When did the Lord discover that I was here?" Di Mingju's brows wrinkle, there's obvious displeasure in his eyes. "I said, call me by my name." Mu Yang doesn't want to compete with him in this aspect, so she readily follows his advice and calls out, "Di Mingju. You hid your aura very well. I didn't notice it at first. It was only when Shalanling took off her clothes that I sensed the fluctuation of your aura." Di Mingju gently strokes her hair, but Mu Yang tilts her head to avoid it. "This is a medicinal pill that I refined. It can restrain the yin qi in the Ghost Wind Valley." Mu Yan doesn't pay attention to Di Mingju's stunned expression. She spreads out her palm, and 3 elixirs appear in her palm. "I've come to deliver elixirs to you, Yingmai and Han Yi. But I think that maybe you don't need them." "No, Ben Jun needs it." Di Mingju's brows are tinged with a trace of indescribable gentleness. "As long as it's something that Mu Yan gives, Ben Jun wants it all." As he said that, he directly swallowed a pill in Mu Yang's hand. When the man's warm lips touch her palm, Mu Yan's heart can't help but jump. She quickly withdrew her hand and placed the other 2 pills on the table. "If there's nothing else, I'll head back first." Saying that, she breaks free from Di Mingju's embrace and turns around to leave. However, just as she takes a step forward, Di Mingju suddenly pulls her back. "Mu Yang, are you angry?" The man's deep voice rang in her ears. Mu Yang stares blankly for a moment, then says with a smile that isn't a smile, "Why should I be angry? Or are you jealous?" "Jealous of your big head?" Mu Yang finally got angry. She fiercely kicked the man's body. At the same time, her body was like a swimming fish. She broke free from the man's embrace and quickly flew out of the door. His body was about to rush out of the door. Suddenly, the door slammed shut in front of her eyes. Then, his body was pressed tightly against the tightly shut door by a tall and hot body. Di Mingju's handsome face is very close. The icy blue eyes seemed to be burning with blazing flames, wanting to devour her completely. His hot breath gently blew on her lips and face, making her whole body heat up. "Di Mingju, let go." "I won't." Di Mingju leans down, and slowly says, "Mu Yan, I've said it before, in this lifetime, I will never let go of your hand." Mu Yang sneered and said, "Because I have something to gain from it." "What pre-celestial holy body, that can allow you to quickly?" Before she could finish speaking, Di Mingju's lips pressed down, completely swallowing her voice. Chapter 500. A broad palm presses the back of her head, forcing her closer to him, unable to escape. But his movements are so gentle, so careful, as if he's protecting a treasure. It also makes Mu Yan sink a little, unable to extricate herself. After a long time, the lips part. Mu Yan's lips are slightly red and swollen, all the more alluring. The silver threads sticking to the corners of her lips make the charming and ambiguous atmosphere in the room seem like someone has added a fire. "Little heartless." Di Mingju's voice is unreasonably hoarse. The broad palm grabs her small hand and slowly moves down, finally pressing down on a hard and scorching place. Mu Yan is so startled that she almost jumps up. She wants to break free from the man's hand, but she's shackled, unable to leave. As a result, she intuitively feels the man's dagger-drawn lust. "Heartless woman, if I really just want your body, why would I have to endure so much?" Mu Yan's face is so red that it's almost dripping water. But it's as if someone has reignited a fire in her heart, melting the ice that has just been built up a little bit. You let go first." Di Mingju presses her hand tighter, his voice is like a hoarse whisper, with a trace of pleading. Muyan, Ben Jun won't touch you before you're willing, but you're responsible for extinguishing the fire that you've lit. An hour later, Di Mingju embraces the sleeping girl in his arms, lowering his head to gently kiss her between the eyebrows. He gets up and goes to the outer room, lightly knocking on the edge of the table. Jun Shong, Han Yi and Ying Mai quickly come over from next door, kneeling in front of him. Di Mingju's expression appears incomparably cold in the darkness. Shalanling has the gold silkworm Jiyu on her. Gold silkworm Jiyu? Han Yi and Ying Mai suddenly raise their heads, looking shocked. Isn't that the Jiyu that only the people of Tianyi men can use? Ying Mai frowns. Jun Shong, you're saying that there are people of Tianyi men in this Ghost Wind Valley? Why would people of Tianyi men come to the Yanwu continent? Could it be? Han Yi clenches his teeth, saying, could it be that someone from Tianyi men has discovered that the Shun musicians are in the Yanwu continent? Someone even knows that Miss Jun is the successor of the Shun musician? When the Shun musician inheritance was triggered by Muyan, it alarmed the Shoshan continent, but it was covered up by Di Mingju. However, the remodeling of Muyan's moon spirit root and the ringing of the ghost bell in the Shun musicians' ruins in the end still attracted the attention of Tianyi men and all the sects of the Shoshan continent. No one knows better than Di Mingju how much those old farts of the Shoshan continent loathe the Shun musicians, how much they dread them, and how much they fear them. The current Mu Yang was still so weak. If these people knew of Mu Yang's existence, even Di Mingju might not be able to protect her. Di Mingju's hands slowly clench and loosen. After leaving the Ghost Wind Valley, I will return to the Shoshan continent. My lord. Han Yi anxiously says, your real body is now in the Yanwu continent. When you return to the Shoshan continent, you won't even have a tenth of your strength. It's too dangerous to deal with matters related to the Shun musicians. It would be better, there's no need to say any more. Di Mingju's gaze sweeps over the inner room, his eyes becoming indescribably gentle. In any case, I will not allow anyone to hurt Muyan. Chapter 501. The Xian division led by Ying Mai is the fastest knife in the polar domain, and it's a knife hidden in the dark. Han Yi and Ying Mai look at each other, and finally bow. As you bid, Jun Shong. For the next 3 days, Mu Yang hides in the space to refine pills. She just doesn't want to see Di Mingju. That night, whenever Mu Yang thinks about it, it's like her whole body is ignited. That shameless pervert, bastard. A few soft pleading words really made her give up her principles and resistance. Although it didn't go to the end, but, Madam Enchantress, don't you think it's too strange? Dr. Wang's question pulls Mu Yang's mind back from that charming night. We were clearly invited to treat the Ghost Lord, but 3 days have passed, and we haven't even seen the sick Ghost Lord's face. Until now, we don't even know what illness the Ghost Lord has. Don't you think it's too strange? Ever since that day when Mu Yang ruthlessly taught him a lesson and awed him by her godly medical skills, Dr. Wang has always been respectful and afraid of Mu Yang. Occasionally, he would even shamelessly ask Mu Yang questions about medical skills. As time goes by, Dr. Wang simply prostrates himself in admiration of Mu Yang's knowledge and strength. After these 3 days, apart from Mu Yang, the other doctors finally realize that something is wrong. They've been invited here for 3 days, and during these 3 days, the Ghost Wind Valley has been serving them comfortably, making them unable to find any fault. But the problem is, they're not here to enjoy, but to treat a disease. As they're talking, a group of ghost envoys wearing the Ghost Wind Valley's uniform suddenly come in. In the blink of an eye, they surround Mu Yang and Dr. Wang. The leader of the ghost envoys condescendingly looks at the two, his expression arrogant and compassionate. Dr. Jun, Dr. Wang, the Ghost Lord invites you. He wants us to go over now. Dr. Wang shows a surprised expression. Don't tell me he wants us to treat the Ghost Lord. The leader of the ghost envoys opens his mouth, revealing a malicious smile. Exactly, so the 2 doctors, please. But it's already dark, and we're going to rest soon. Dr. Wang immediately retorted, the most important thing for a doctor to do is to focus. Even if we go there now, we won't be able to diagnose and save the patient. Hehe, That's not up to you. The ghost messenger sneered in disdain, and then his gaze became increasingly cold. Haven't the two of you heard of a saying? If the king of hell wants you dead by midnight, he won't let you live until the 5th. Since our king of hell has asked you to go and treat the patient now, you must go now. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. As soon as he finished speaking, dozens of ghost constables unsheathed their weapons. The cold gleam of their blades accompanied the increasingly dense and cold air in the room as they slowly approached Dr. Wang and Mu Yang. Dr. Wang was so shocked that he fell from his seat and sat on the ground. Mu Yang, however, faintly hooks up the corners of her lips. The ghost envoy glanced at Mu Yang and sneered, "Madam Enchantress, I know that your subordinates are very powerful, but the door to the inner hall is already closed. Even if they wanted to come in, they wouldn't be able to. Just give up." Chapter 502. The ghost messenger's face revealed a bit of suspicion, then he immediately sneered and waved his hand to have the two people take them away. Outside the house, Mu Yang heard waves of panicked and angry voices coming from the entire inner hall. "Impudent! I am a doctor invited by your ghost king to treat your ghost king. How dare you be so rude and impudent? Do you know who I am? How dare you attack me? Ah! Let me go, where are you taking me?" The chaotic scene, the angry curses and screams, caused panic to spread throughout the entire Ghostwind Valley. However, the doctor's resistance was futile. The actions of the ghost messengers were very rough and cruel, completely lacking the attentive and careful treatment they had towards these doctors a few days ago. This caused a sentence to flash through Mu Yang's mind. The dagger was revealed. In these 3 days, presumably Liu Se and Shalanling were making some sort of preparation, so they had been biding their time. Now that the preparations were complete, they no longer needed to disguise themselves and revealed their true colors. Soon, all the doctors were escorted by the ghost envoys to a spacious hall. There were no seriously ill ghost kings in the hall. Only Yama King Liu Se, whose entire body was wrapped up tightly, and Shalanling, who wore a gorgeous dress and heavy makeup, sat on the main seats. The surroundings of the hall were filled with ghost envoys dressed in uniforms. Compared to the ghost envoys in the ghost city, the cultivation of these ghost envoys is a whole level higher. As they got closer, they could smell the thick scent of blood coming from their bodies. It proved how many lives they had stained their hands. More than 10 highly respected doctors were pushed into the hall like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone's faces were filled with unease, but they kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak. At this moment, many people were already regretting in their hearts. He shouldn't have risked his life in the Ghost Wind Valley for the core condensation secret technique. "Yama, what are you doing?" Suddenly, a loud and clear voice rang out, breaking the silence. "We are the doctors that you have personally invited to treat the Ghost King, not criminals. Don't tell me this is how you Ghost City treats your guests." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Seeing who the person who spoke was, many people showed expressions of relief. "So Dr. Song is here. That's great. Yes. Dr. Song is a person of virtue and prestige, who in the entire Yenwu continent wouldn't regard him highly. Even the royal family of Jingcheng country has to respectfully invite him over. The one speaking is Jingcheng country's Changsho Hall, Dr. Song. He is extremely famous in Yenwu continent, and can be said to be second only to godly Dr. Qian Qing." Very soon, another white-haired old man with a pair of awkward eyes spoke up. "What nonsense." Chapter 502. The ghost messenger's face revealed a bit of suspicion, then he immediately sneered and waved his hand to have the two people take them away. Outside the house, Mu Yang heard waves of panicked and angry voices coming from the entire inner hall. "Impudent! I am a doctor invited by your ghost king to treat your ghost king. How dare you be so rude and impudent? Do you know who I am? How dare you attack me? Ah! Let me go, where are you taking me?" The chaotic scene, the angry curses and screams, caused panic to spread throughout the entire Ghostwind Valley. However, the doctor's resistance was futile. The actions of the ghost messengers were very rough and cruel, completely lacking the attentive and careful treatment they had towards these doctors a few days ago. This caused a sentence to flash through Mu Yang's mind. The dagger was revealed. In these 3 days, presumably Liu Se and Shi Lanling were making some sort of preparation, so they had been biding their time. Now that the preparations were complete, they no longer needed to disguise themselves and revealed their true colors. Soon, all the doctors were escorted by the ghost envoys to a spacious hall. There were no seriously ill ghost kings in the hall. Only Yama King Liu Se, whose entire body was wrapped up tightly, and Shi Lanling, who wore a gorgeous dress and heavy makeup, sat on the main seats. The surroundings of the hall were filled with ghost envoys dressed in uniforms. Compared to the ghost envoys in the ghost city, the cultivation of these ghost envoys is a whole level higher. As they got closer, they could smell the thick scent of blood coming from their bodies. It proved how many lives they had stained their hands. More than 10 highly respected doctors were pushed into the hall like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone's faces were filled with unease, but they kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak. At this moment, many people were already regretting in their hearts. He shouldn't have risked his life in the Ghost Wind Valley for the core condensation secret technique. Yama, what are you doing? Suddenly, a loud and clear voice rang out, breaking the silence. We are the doctors that you have personally invited to treat the Ghost King, not criminals. Don't tell me this is how you Ghost City treats your guests. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Seeing who the person who spoke was, many people showed expressions of relief. So Dr. Song is here. That's great. Yes, yes. Dr. Song is a person of virtue and prestige, who in the entire Yenwu continent wouldn't regard him highly. Even the royal family of Jingcheng country has to respectfully invite him over. The one speaking is Jingcheng country's Changsho Hall, Dr. Song. He is extremely famous in Yenwu continent, and can be said to be second only to godly Dr. Qian Qing. Very soon, another white-haired old man with a pair of awkward eyes spoke up. What nonsense. Chapter 503. At the head of the table, Liu Se's face was hidden behind a mask, and no expression could be seen. Only a pair of eyes, without a trace of warmth, coldly swept over everyone below. Shi Lanling, who is sitting next to her, is glaring at Muyan. A pair of devilish eyes, outlined by thick makeup, exuded intense hatred and excitement. The only one with a leisurely expression in the entire audience was probably Mu Yang alone. While everyone was arguing, she openly found a place to sit down, poured herself a cup of tea, and slowly drank it. Looking at her leisurely appearance, Shi Lanling remembered the embarrassment she made 3 days ago. The evil fire in her heart burned crazily, making her almost unable to control herself from pouncing over and tearing Mu Yang's face to pieces. But thinking about what was about to happen, Shi Lanling calmed down and revealed a sinister smile. All right, let's not talk nonsense now. Dr. Song raised his hand and gestured for everyone to quiet down. Then, he turned his sharp gaze towards Liu Se. Where is the Ghost King? Didn't you tell us to treat the Ghost King? That's right, after you cure the Ghost King, you have to hand over the core condensation secret technique according to the agreement. If you dare to deceive us, don't blame this old man for being impolite. Dr. Du coldly says, when the time comes, we will unite all the countries to boycott the Ghost City, and make you completely disappear from the Yenwu continent. Ha ha ha, boycott the Ghost City. With trash like you. Liu Se finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. The ghost envoys surrounding the doctors all revealed looks of ridicule and disdain. Seeing this, Dr. Du and Dr. Song's faces alternated between green and white. Good, good, you actually dare to fool us like this. Let's wait and see. Everyone, since the Ghost City doesn't have any sincerity, what are we still doing here? Let's go. Dr. Du waved his hand, and the other doctors immediately responded. Everyone was about to leave in anger. However, just as they reached the door, 2 ghost servants blocked their way. Get lost. Don't block my path. Dr. Song pushed out his palm, and a powerful Xian Qi that contained an intense killing intent filled the air. Dr. Song, who looked like a scholar on the outside, actually had the cultivation of heaven stage. Therefore, there was no fear on his face. He also didn't think that 2 mere ghost messengers could block his way. However, in the face of such an attack, the 2 ghost servants blocking the door. However, there was not the slightest hint of fear on his face. Instead, He revealed a mocking smile. Suddenly, a huge palm leaf fan appeared in one of the ghost envoy's hands. He slapped Physician Song forcefully. A bone-chilling cold wind blew against his face. Dr. Song only felt that the profound chi that he pushed out with his palm was completely swallowed up by this yin wind in an instant. Then, there were a few loud bangs. One by one, the doctors who rushed to the door were kicked into the air by the ghost envoys. He landed heavily in the hall. For a moment, the entire hall was filled with cries of anguish. Dr. Song stood up from the ground, blood seeping out from the corner of his mouth. He fiercely glared at Liu Se. Poison smog. Liu Se, how dare you use poison smog on us? You deranged beast, what are you trying to do? Daring to make a move against so many doctors in the Ghost Wind Valley, aren't you afraid of being hunted down by all the martial artists? Liu Se slowly stood up from her seat and pulled with her hand. Chapter 504. Many people revealed expressions of horror and disgust when they saw her face. Even Muyan stares blankly. Even she didn't expect that Liu Se would actually be a woman, and that her true appearance would actually be like this. Liu Se leisurely and contentedly enjoyed their horrified expressions. Then, he walked step by step towards Dr. Song and Doctor, do you want to leave so soon? What's the rush? Don't you want to heal the Ghost King? Don't you want the core condensation secret skill? Dr. Song gritted his teeth. Liu Se, don't go too far. Actually, you guys don't have the core condensation secret skill, do you? It was just a gimmick to trick us into coming here. What are you trying to do? My ghost city naturally has the secret skill of pill condensation. Saying this, Liu Se glanced at Shilanling. Shixianzi is the best proof. Everyone turned to look at Shilanling. Not bad. Everyone knew that Shilanling could refine pills. However, was Shilanling really willing to hand over the pill condensation technique? Shilanling stood up, her heavily made-up face revealing a flamboyant smile. Of course, as long as you cure the Ghost King, Lanling is willing to hand over the core condensation secret technique. I believe that everyone who has come here must really want this core condensation secret method. Saying that, her gaze sweeps over Mu Yang. Seeing that she was still unmoved, he sneered, "Slut, keep pretending. You want to learn alchemy? You must be crazy. Otherwise, why would he rush to the Ghost Wind Valley? However, you will never have the chance. Since the Ghost City is really willing to use the secret skill of pill condensation as a reward, why are we still delaying? Hurry up and take us to treat the Ghost Lord." At this moment, even Dr. Song and Dr. Du seemed to have forgotten the unpleasantness from before as their eyes burned with passion. That was the core condensation secret technique. The Yanwu continent is so big, who knows how many practitioners, doctors, and alchemists there are. But those who could concoct pills were few and far between. Whoever could master the method of alchemy would be able to stand at the peak of the medical world and become a superior person. He even found a shortcut to transcending the tribulation and ascending. This was also the reason why Dr. Song and the others rushed over to treat the Ghost Lord even though they knew that the Ghost Wind Valley was dangerous. Liu Se, however, sneered and said unhurriedly, "There's no hurry. Before I let you treat the Ghost Lord, I still want to see if you have the real ability to treat the Ghost Lord. After all, the Ghost Lord is currently the most supreme person in our Ghost City. Not just any doctor is qualified to treat him." Dr. Song said anxiously, "If you don't let us treat the Ghost King, how do you know if we are qualified or not?" "It's very simple." Liu Se looks around, and her gaze finally falls on Muyan. Mu Yang only feels a strong killing intent sweep over her body. They only heard Liu Se continue, "As long as you can win against Shilanling and Shixianzi in terms of medicinal pills, then you will have the qualifications to treat the Ghost Lord's illness. In this case, I will naturally let you in to treat the Ghost Lord's illness. I beat Shixianzi." Hearing this condition, many doctors frowned. However, there were also a few doctors, such as Dr. Song and Dr. Du, who revealed arrogant expressions. Although Shilanling was very famous, in terms of medical skills, they believed that they were much better than this little girl. Chapter 505. Hee hee. Shilanling sneers. Standing at the head of the table, she condescendingly looks down at them. Dr. Song, Dr. Du, I'm afraid you didn't hear it clearly. The competition that the Ghost King is talking about is for you to compete with me in alchemy. As she says that, she sweeps Muyin with a venomous and arrogant gaze. I forgot to tell you, the Ghost Lord's illness can't be cured by ordinary drafts and medical skills. Only elixirs can alleviate and truly cure it. If you want to go in and diagnose the Ghost Lord's illness, then first beat me in alchemy. Alchemy? Dr. Song says in disbelief. Are you kidding? If we could do alchemy, how could we possibly come all the way to the Ghost Wind Valley? These people who have come to the Ghost Wind Valley, which one of them isn't aiming for the secret method of pill condensation? If they could do alchemy, how could they possibly take this kind of risk? What's more, they still have to compete in alchemy with Shalanling, who had already made a name for herself 10 years ago. Liu Se, Shalanling, are you playing with all of us? Liu Se hooks up the corners of her lips, and the flesh on her ugly, pitted face immediately piles together, looking even more terrifying. She laughs sinisterly. Doctors, rest assured. Since you're going to compete with Shaxianzi, you'll naturally have the skill of alchemy. Let us have the skill of alchemy. Could it be that you're going to make the secret method of pill condensation public now? Thinking of this possibility, each and every one of the doctors below becomes fiery. Liu Se doesn't answer them, but claps her hands. Soon, a group of black-clothed ghost envoys come forward with trays. On each tray, there's a small black cup. There's also one in front of Muyin. She takes a look inside, and finds that inside that small cup, there's a black bug the size of a baby's fingernail. An unpleasant stench emanated from the little black bug's body. Just smelling it a little, Muyin immediately feels her stomach turning upside down. She immediately holds her breath. But as she looks at that black bug, her gaze becomes incomparably deep. That's because she already recognizes what it is. The foremost poison in the world, Gu. It stinks. What the hell is this thing? Why is it so disgusting? In front of Liu Se, a small cup was also brought over. She didn't care at all. She grabbed the little black bug from the goblet and let it crawl on her dry and cracked skin. There's an intoxicated expression on her face. This is the Kai Gu. After taking it, you'll naturally have the ability to condense a dan. In this way, you'll naturally be able to compete with Shaxianzi. Someone was still holding the small cup and examining it. Hearing Liu Se's words, he immediately revealed a frightened expression, his hands trembling. The small cup fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The originally quiet little black bug, after landing on the ground, immediately burrowed into that person's body. The seemingly fragile little worm crawled onto the man's skin and quickly burrowed into his flesh. It traveled along the skin and quickly reached the location of the heart. Get lost. Get lost. Don't crawl into my body. Help. Chapter 506. The doctor finally calms down, but his face is full of fright, his whole body shivering. Liu Se, Dr. Chen, if you don't believe me, you can try refining the pill on the spot. As soon as her voice falls, someone immediately brings up a huge furnace. All kinds of herbs are placed next to the furnace, and there's also a specialized medicine boy helping to light the furnace fire. Dr. Chen is skeptical, but he still steps forward and starts to refine the pill. As the herbs slowly melt in the furnace, the doctor hesitates for a moment, activating his internal force, wanting to make the pill inside condense and take shape. At this moment, Muyin's pupils slightly contract. Ever since her spiritual root was reconstructed, and she possessed spiritual power, she can see a lot of things that were originally invisible to the naked eye. For example, right now, the Kai Gu inside Dr. Chen's body is still restless after he uses his internal force. The tiny, invisible bug is nibbling at Dr. Chen's heart little by little, sucking his flesh and blood. And what comes in return is that the internal force that Dr. Chen originally sent out from his palm has turned into energy similar to spiritual power. As this kind of pseudo-spiritual power is continuously sent into the pill furnace, the pill in the furnace really starts to slowly condense. And no one knows that in this process, the little black bug attached to Dr. Chen's heart has grown a size. This is using a human body as a sacrifice to feed the Gu bug. Although for a short time, it gives people the ability to condense a pill, there will be a day when they will be bitten back by the GU bug. Finally, their heart will be completely eaten, their flesh and blood will be sucked dry, and they will die. Muyen's brows tightly knit together, her gaze towards Liu Se is filled with graveness. This kind of method is really too insidious. At this moment, the pill furnace is emitting smoke in spirals, and the fragrance of medicine wafts. Dr. Chen impatiently steps forward to open the pill furnace. Seeing the pill lying inside, he stares blankly at first. Then he says with disbelief and ecstasy, "Success, I succeeded. I actually refined an pill. This time, it's really a stone that raises 1,000 ripples in the living room." All the doctors gather around to look at the pill. After confirming that it's really a first-grade nourishing chi pill, they are immediately dumbstruck. This GU really can give people alchemy skills. For a moment, everyone's scorching gazes turn towards the small goblet. The Kai GU that made them fear and loathe just moments ago is now brimming with alluring magic. As long as I consume this GU worm, I can become an alchemist. Some people couldn't help but stretch their hands towards the small goblet. Dr. Wang, who was standing beside Mu Yang, also had a fiery expression on his face. He wished that he could immediately swallow the GU worm like Dr. Chen so that he could immediately have the ability to refine pills. However, his hand had just stretched out when it was grabbed by a slender hand that was snow-white like jade. The girl's light and sweet-sounding voice was neither light nor heavy. It slowly sounded, but it was like a morning bell, ringing in everyone's mind. The so-called GU worms need to be fed with flesh and poison to survive. May I ask Ghost King Liu, what is used to feed this Kai GU? It's unknown when, but Muyan has already stood up from her seat, looking towards Liu Se's direction. Just now, Ghost King Liu said that as long as you win, you can always have the secret alchemy skill. In that case, what would happen to those who failed? After taking in the Kai GU, can it still be taken out? As soon as these words came out, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. Chapter 507. It was only at this moment that everyone awoke from their burning desire for the alchemy secret technique. He remembered how terrifying GU worms were. For a moment, everyone retracted their hands and avoided the small goblet like avoiding a snake or a scorpion. On the other hand, the joy on Dr. Chen's face faded and was replaced by fear. Shalanling grits her teeth and fiercely glares at Muyan. "Slut, mind your own business." Mu Yang is too lazy to care about her, she just stares at Liu Se. Liu Se didn't have the slightest intention of avoiding it. She laughed out loud, and looked at everyone's gaze as if she was looking at ants that could be trampled to death at any time. "If you fail, of course, only death awaits you. I've spent a lot of time preparing these Kai GU for you, and it wasn't until tonight that they were all ready. How can we waste it? If anyone loses to Shishenzi in alchemy, your flesh and blood will become fodder for the Kai GU. To be able to help Ben Wang's lovely Kai GU advance, it can also be considered your honor." Liu Se's malicious gaze turns towards Muyan, and she says in a rough voice, "I wonder if the Enchantress of Medicine is satisfied with this explanation. Looking at your delicate skin and tender flesh, I think my Kai GU will certainly like you." "No. I don't want to eat the GU, I don't want to be eaten by the GU." Someone finally couldn't help but scream in horror, "Let me go, I don't want to treat the Ghost King, and I don't want any alchemy secret skill, let me go." As he spoke, he madly rushed out of the hall. However, just as he reached the door, he was stopped by a ghost officer. "What do you want? Do you want to force me to consume the GU? I'm telling you, I'm a senior doctor. There are a lot of martial artists out there who would sell their lives for me. If you dare to touch me, I promise to raze your ghost city to the ground." Liu Se let out a low sigh. "Are you really giving up?" Of course it's true." A treacherous smile appeared on Liu Se's ugly face. "All right then, let him go. Our ghost city will not force anyone." Hearing Liu Se's words, the ghost messenger guarding the door immediately retreated to the side. After the doctor recovered from his shock, he thought that Liu Se had been frightened by him. He immediately revealed a complacent expression and swaggered out. As he left, he was still spitting out ruthless words. Liu Se, Shalanling, just you wait. I will never let this matter rest. Everyone saw that he had really left the main hall safe and sound. A few doctors were tempted and wanted to follow them. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. The doctor had just taken 10 steps out of the hall when he suddenly grabbed his own throat. His body was on the verge of collapse. A series of intermittent cracking sounds came from his throat. Then he swung round, swaying unsteadily. The lights outside the Dark Knight Palace shone faintly on his face. In an instant, the crowd let out screams of terror. Black holes appeared on his face. It was as if it had been corrupted by something. A thick, stinky, dark brown liquid flowed out of his gaping mouth. In just a short period of time, the senior doctor who had been elegant and graceful just a moment ago had unexpectedly become even more terrifying than Liu Se. He breathed his last. The entire hall was deathly silent. The next moment, someone asked with a trembling voice, "What's going on?" Chapter 508. Apart from this hall, there is not a single living thing in the entire Ghostwind Valley. As for the rest of you, as long as you take a step out of this hall, you will become exactly like him. It was indeed the poison Smog. Muyin's complexion becomes more and more grave, and she can hear the thumping of her heart in her ears. She knows very well that nothing should happen to Di Mingju and the others, but she still can't stop worrying. He had already given the antidote to the poison Smog to the 3 of them. They shouldn't be corroded by the poison Smog, right? Meanwhile, Liu Se was already looking around from high above. She sneered, "Now, is there anyone else who wants to leave?" There was dead silence. "He, you should have been obedient from the start." Liu Se clapped her hands, "Since there are no objections, let's start the competition now." As she said that, she casually pointed. "Let's start with you." She was actually referring to Dr. Chen, who had just successfully concocted a pill. The pill he had just successfully refined was an inferior first-grade qi-nourishing pill. Shalanling held the pill he refined in her hand, her face full of disdain. "If you want to compete with me, you have to refine a second-rank pill. Otherwise, I won't bother to make a move." "Did you hear that?" Liu Se looked at Dr. Chen. "Concoct medicinal pills of second rank and above." No. It's my first time concocting pills. It's impossible for me to concoct a second-grade pill." Before he could finish his words, he was lifted up by the neck by the ghost messenger. "If you don't want to concoct pills, then throw you out of the hall." What was outside the hall? It was the poison Smog that could turn a person into a corpse in an instant. "I concoct pills. I will concoct the pill now." Dr. Chen cried and crawled to the front of the furnace to start concocting the pill. After an hour, Dr. Chen had almost exhausted all of his qi. And Muyin also sees that his heart's blood is slowly being sucked away by the Kaiji Yu. His entire body became thinner at a visible speed. However, an hour later, there was a loud bang. The pill furnace exploded, and the pill concoction failed. This was inevitable. Even with the assistance of the Kaiji Yu, this is, after all, Dr. Chen's first time refining pills. How could he casually refine a second-grade elixir? Dr. Chen stared blankly at the exploding alchemy furnace. Soon after, she looked at Liu Se in fright, her whole body trembling like a sieve. The corners of Liu Se's mouth slowly pull up, revealing a mouthful of ghastly white teeth. That smile is really indescribably happy. Dr. Chen's alchemy has failed, then you're just a useless waste. Therefore, right now, you can become my lovely Kaigu's food. Spare my life. Ah. A short and shrill scream came out of Dr. Chen's mouth, and then it stopped abruptly. He lay on the ground stiffly. His already skinny body shriveled at a speed visible to the naked eye. His eye sockets were sunken, and there was only a layer of skin covering his skeleton. He looked like a mummy. Then, at the location of his heart, a small black worm that was several times bigger bit through his flesh and clothes and burrowed out. Fluttering its wings, it flew to Liu Se's hand and drilled into her body. Dr. Chen's heart, on the other hand, was empty. The crowd fell into a deathly silence once again. Even the ghost envoys of the ghost city, as well as Magistrate Liu, have unsightly expressions on their faces as they watch this scene. And all the invited doctors were even more frightened, their faces drained of blood, their legs trembling. All right, this one is already useless. Next, who should it be? Chapter 509. Only when she looks at Muyin does she suddenly meet a pair of bottomless peach blossom eyes. Not dodging or avoiding, but it gives her a kind of bone-chilling chill. Liu Se's eyes slightly narrow, the muscles on her wrinkled and pockmarked face slightly tremble. It's this woman who killed her Xianji. She won't kill her so quickly. She must let her suffer the torment of fear and despair, bit by bit, torture her to death. However, a dark light flashes through Liu Se's eyes. She always feels that this woman has an energy that she's familiar with, but also frightening. What is it? Her gaze flits over Muyin, and finally falls on a person at random. Next, you. Don't I don't want to take that Gu, help. An hour later, there are already 3 corpses in the spacious main hall. Each of them has their flesh and blood sucked dry by the Kai Gu, their hearts gnawed away, dying incomparably miserable deaths. And among these 3 doctors, not a single one could successfully refine a second-level elixir. The entire hall is deathly still, only Shalanling's insolent laughter echoes. You call yourselves famous doctors in vain, but you can't even refine a second-level elixir. If you're not trash, then what are you? She looks at everyone with eyes brimming with resentment and hatred. At this moment, that noble fairy who seemed to be above the common populace, no longer exists. Since 3 days ago, when Di Mingju kicked her out of the house naked, many people in the Ghost Wind Valley had seen it. Shalanling not only hates Jun Muyin, but also everyone in the Ghost Wind Valley. If she lets these people of the Ghost Wind Valley go out alive, her reputation will really be ruined. Moreover, she's lost face in front of everyone, ridiculed, humiliated. Why can these people be high and mighty as famous doctors? She wants to see these people even more miserable than her, even worse than pigs and dogs. Especially Jun Muyin, that slut. Shalanling looks at Muyin, and sees that her face no longer has a leisurely expression, but has a dignified expression. Her heart is really unspeakably carefree. This slut, seeing so many people die tragically, she's finally afraid. But it's useless to be afraid. Today, I will make you die without a burial ground. TSK, so many have already died. Who's next? Shalanling chuckles, then she suddenly turns her gaze towards Muyin, Jun Muyin, as the Shunshu of my ghost city, as well as the renowned Enchantress of medicine. Don't you want to contribute to our ghost king? Dr. Wang, who was standing next to Mu Yang, immediately changed his expression, and his whole body trembled. But he still couldn't help but tremble as he says, Dr. Jun is best at refining drafts, and she's so young, it's better not. If I don't let her do it, are you going to do it? Hearing Shalanling's question, Dr. Wang's face immediately turned pale. He didn't dare to say anything else. Mu Yang sneers and is about to step forward. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out, "This old man will compete with you." Muyin stares blankly as she sees Dr. Song striding forward. In her hand, she's still holding the small cup containing the Kai Gu. Seeing that he's about to eat that Kai Gu, Muyin promptly stops him. Dr. Song, you don't need to do it for me. Chapter 510. At your age, you actually have such godly medical skills, and can even refine such a heaven-defying draft. This shows that your potential is limitless. No matter how useless our old bones are, we won't let a little girl like you sacrifice herself before us. What Yenwu continent's practitioners and mortals need the most is the existence and continuation of doctors like you. Saying that, without waiting for Muyin to stop him, he directly swallows the Kai Gu in the small cup into his belly. Mu Yang's pupils suddenly contract. An indescribable emotion surged from her organs to her brain. Dr. Song has already walked forward with large strides. He coldly looks at Liu Se and Shalanling. Elegant and holy Shishenzi, I spit on you. It turned out that she was just a black-hearted woman with a human face but a beast's heart. For a beast like you to be called a doctor, it's an insult to other doctors who save the dying and heal the injured. Old fart. All right. Since you don't want to live anymore, don't blame me for being impolite. Shalanling's entire face contorted in anger. With a wave of her hand, a ghost constable swiftly brought over her personal pill furnace. Dr. Song did not look at her again as he walked straight to his pill furnace. As the medicinal herbs were melted by the raging fire, the powerful Shen Qi in Dr. Song's body revolved, driving the medicinal concoction to fuse. Just like the doctors before him, Muyan can clearly see that the Kai Ji Yu that's attached to his heart is nibbling away at his flesh little by little. Dr. Song's originally rosy complexion gradually turned pale as time passed. His eye sockets also began to sink in. This was because if he wanted to refine a second-grade elixir, he would need to consume more profound qi. And the more internal force it mobilizes, the more flesh and blood it will stimulate the Kai Ji Yu to consume. But if he didn't consume a large amount of profound qi, it was impossible to condense elixirs of second grade and above. This was a vicious cycle that pushed people into a dead end. 2 hours later, a medicinal fragrance wafted out from the pill furnace in front of Dr. Song. And this fragrance made all the doctors in the hall restless. This is a second-grade, Shen Yuan pill, and from the rich fragrance, it's at least a second-grade upper-grade pill. That's great. As expected of Dr. Song, he actually refined a second-grade medicinal pill. Almost at the same time, Shalanling also succeeded in concocting pills. Compared to Dr. Song, who was thin and haggard after concocting pills, Shalanling's forehead was only slightly sweaty, but her skin was becoming increasingly light and transparent, radiating radiance. She looked at Dr. Song contemptuously, her face full of disdain. At this moment, a ghost messenger walked in front of Dr. Song and opened the pill furnace. There were 3 pills in the furnace. They were translucent, round, and fragrant. The ghost envoy picked up a pill, distinguishing it, then said in a clear voice, "Superior second grade, Shen Yuan pill. This is great. It really is a superior grade 2 pill. We won this time. We have hope." However, very quickly, the ghost messenger arrived in front of Shalanling, picked up the pill in front of her, sniffed it, and tasted it. Then he said loudly, "Third grade medium Shen Yuan pill." In an instant, the noisy hall became deathly silent. The doctors who were overjoyed just a moment ago turned pale, and their faces were filled with despair. Dr. Song's body swayed, and he almost couldn't support himself to stand. Chapter 511. Liu Se also reveals an ambiguous smile, using a rough voice to say, "Since you've failed in the alchemy competition, then Dr. Song, you can only become my Kai goose fodder." Dr. Song's pupils constricted slightly. There was obvious fear and shock in his eyes. Anyone who has seen with their own eyes that the Kai Ji Yu has sucked the flesh and blood dry, the heart hollowed out of the corpse, there's no way they wouldn't be terrified. Soon, he felt a sharp pain in his heart. There was also the despair and coldness of his life force being sucked out bit by bit. Just as he was about to close his eyes and give up on life, suddenly, a hand grasped his wrist meridian. Dr. Song opened his eyes in surprise and saw a beautiful face right in front of him. Then, before he could react, the girl's calm voice came into his ears, "Dr. Song, I'm sorry." A pair of slender hands suddenly tore open his clothes. His already bony chest was exposed. One by one, the silver needles were pierced into his body. As more and more silver needles pierced in, the thick profound energy seeped through the silver needles into his acupoints and tendons. Dr. Song actually felt the pain in his heart and the coldness in his body slowly recede. Then, a sharp pain came from the skin on his chest. The girl in front of him held a knife in her hand, and her movements were extremely clean and efficient as she cut open his chest. Then, he raised his hand and dropped the needle. By the time everyone reacted, Dr. Song could no longer hold on and collapsed to the ground. On Mu Yang's hand, there's already a black bug the size of an adult fingernail poking out with a silver needle. Kai Ji Yu. The black insect was pierced by the silver needle. It struggled violently and made a strange, ear-piercing sound. However, as Mu Yang revolves her internal force, the silver needle bursts into a scorching flame. That Kai Ji Yu is immediately burnt to ashes. Once again, the whole place was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Until Muyan throws away the silver needles, pats off the dust on her hands, and shows Liu Se a charming and provocative smile. So this is the Kai Gur. His tone was filled with disdain. Liu Se's gaze instantly became incomparably cold, her whole body emitting a powerful pressure and murderous aura. That almost suffocating pressure and murderous aura caused the doctors who had just been wild with joy to once again sink into a state of panic. Mu Yang's expression also becomes serious. This time, it was not an illusion. She clearly felt that this Liu Se's cultivation was higher than hers. Even the aura emanating from her body is far higher than that of the Yanwu continent. Just like the pressure that occasionally leaks from Di Mingju and the others. And at this moment, Liu Se slowly, with a hoarse and unpleasant-to-hear voice, said, "Miss Jun's bare-handed medical skill in taking the GU really makes me gasp in amazement. Since the Enchantress of Heaven has such ability, then from what I see, the next person to compete will be you. Shixianzi, what do you think?" Shilanling immediately laughed. "Good, very good. Jun Muyan, I've waited for this moment to compete with you for a very long time." Magistrate Liu, who had been silent all this while, finally couldn't help but step forward. With a trembling voice, he says, "Yamadaran, although Miss Jun doesn't know alchemy, the godly drafts that she refines have better effects than elixirs. Moreover, her medical skills are truly superb. Few people can match her." Chapter 512. Hearing Magistrate Liu mercilessly say that she's inferior to Muyan, Shilanling's face is filled with malevolent anger. Liu Se's expression was still indifferent. Her cold gaze looked towards Magistrate Liu, and the corners of her mouth lifted, revealing a terrifying smile. "Is that so? The drafts refined by the Enchantress are really better than elixirs?" Yes. This subordinate dares to guarantee it with my life." When Magistrate Liu hears Liu Se say that, he thinks that she's been moved by his words, and promptly says, "The drafts that Miss Jun refines sell much better than Shixian's elixirs in the Ghost City. Her medical skills are also acknowledged to be very good. If it's her, she will definitely be able to save the Ghost King." As soon as Magistrate Liu finished speaking, he was suddenly grabbed by the neck. Then, a cloud of black mist enveloped his entire face. A mournful howl came out from Magistrate Liu's mouth, and his face turned blue and purple at a speed visible to the naked eye. His skin was also covered with potholes. Liu Se swung her hand, and threw Magistrate Liu, who had already fainted, onto the ground. He sneered, "If this king says that only pills can treat the Ghost King, then only pills can treat the Ghost King. Who do you think you are to dare to make irresponsible remarks in front of this prince? Since you want to use your life as a guarantee, this king will fulfill your wish." Shilanling was originally worried that Liu Se would really believe that Jun Muyan was stronger than her, but when she sees this scene, she immediately laughs heartily. "Jun Muyan, did you hear that? If you want to save the Ghost Lord, you can only use alchemy. Even if you can refine godly drafts are only drafts in the end. How can they compare to elixirs?" Her heavily made-up face was filled with unbridled pride and hatred. It's as if he can already see Mu Yang's miserable appearance of the Kai Gu sucking away her flesh and blood, dying without a whole corpse. Dr. Song struggled free from the despair of death and was ecstatic that he had survived the terrifying Gu worm. But Liu Se and Shilanling's shamelessness was like a stick to his head, making him so angry that his whole body trembled. These scum, they didn't even look for a doctor to treat the Ghost Lord. What they wanted was for all the doctors to be eaten by the GU. I'll compete with you. I'll compete with you again." Dr. Song doesn't care about his weakness from losing too much blood. He shouts loudly while tugging at Mu Yang's sleeves. Lowering his voice, he says, "Little girl, quickly leave this place. I just realized that you're not afraid of the poison smog. I'll help you hold them back. You leave quickly." Shilanling sneered and looked at Dr. Song with disdain. "Just look at your half-dead appearance. What right do you have to compare with me? Without the Kai Gu in your body, you can't even condense your Dan, so what right do you have to compare with me? Then let this old man compete with you." "No, I'll compete with you." "Shilanling, Liu Se, do you really think that us doctors are easy to bully? Even if it's eaten up by the Kai Gu, so what? This old man will compete with you." Dr. Du, Dr. Jiang, Dr. Li. Each and every one of them, doctors of virtue and prestige, stand in front of Muyin. Just now, they were still filled with fear of death and Gu worms. But at this moment, they were all filled with righteous indignation, filled with the courage to face death calmly. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid of death, it wasn't that he didn't want to live. But they know that today, the Ghost Wind Valley won't let any one of them off. And these old guys, if they die, then they die. Chapter 513. Today, if they all die here, Yanwu continent's medical science will fall back by at least 30 years. And the cause of all this is their greed for the secret method of pill condensation. But at this very moment, Muyin, who has taken out the Gu with her bare hands, lets them see hope. Such a little girl who's not even 20 years old, but has such godly medical skills. She can even refine drafts that can bring the dead back to life. Such a rare seedling, a spark that can raise Yanwu continent's medical skills by a whole realm. How could they allow her to extinguish it? So, at this moment, all the doctors who were once greedy for life and afraid of death stand up. Standing in front of Muyin. Even Dr. Wang, who once ridiculed Muyin, stands in front of Muyin with trembling legs. They spread open their not-so-strong arms, protecting Muyin behind them like an eagle protecting a chick. Muyin stares at this scene in a daze, and she can't help but reach out and press her chest. At the place where her heart should be filled with hatred and be sealed in ice. At this moment, she doesn't know why, but there's a surge of warmth. This warmth washes through every cell in her body, making her feel sour and ashamed, but also indescribably moved. Muyin takes a deep breath and pushes aside the doctors in front of her. She smiles faintly at Shalanling and Liu Se. "All right, I'll compete with you in alchemy. Little girl, don't be impulsive." That's right, that Shalanling, even old Song couldn't beat her. How could you be her opponent? Dr. Jun, you're good at drafts and medical skills. There's no need to compete with that despicable woman in alchemy. She's already been immersed in alchemy for nearly 10 years, and you're not even 20 yet. How could you possibly be her opponent? The doctors surrounding Muyin are all anxious, each and every one of them earnestly advising her. "Little girl, don't try to be brave. It's better for us old farts to risk our lives than for a little girl like you to die. You'd better run away quickly." Muyin looks at the faces anxiously scolding her. Although they're speaking harsh words, they're full of worry for her. Her brows slightly curve, revealing a respectful smile, and she slowly bows. "Thank you seniors for your care. However, this competition belongs to me and Shalanling, so I ask the seniors to believe me. I will win." Everyone was taken aback. It wasn't because when the girl in front of him smiled, it was as dazzling as the sun, more beautiful than 100 flowers blooming. It's because her smile is brimming with self-confidence and unruliness, as if Liu Se, Kai Ji-yu, Shalanling, in her eyes, they're nothing more than insignificant ants. Shalanling doesn't see Muyin's expression. Hearing her words, she immediately looks contemptuous. "Jun Muyin, why are you still talking nonsense? Still not coming over to take the Kai Ji-yu and compete with me? I can't wait to see the appearance of you being gnawed into a dried corpse by the Kai Ji-yu after you lose to me." Ha ha ha. Muyin brushes her clothes and slowly turns around. His peach blossom eyes were sparkling and bottomless, but there was not a trace of panic in them. Her gaze sweeps over Liu Se and Shalanling, only then does she carelessly say, "There's no need to take the Kai Ji-yu. If you want to compete in alchemy, then let's directly start." Hearing this, Shalanling and Liu Se were both startled. Chapter 514. Shalanling sneers. "Won't take the Kai Ji-yu? Relying on a waste like you, without the help of the Kai Ji-yu, can you refine an elixir? Stop dreaming. Or do you think that if you don't take the Kai Ji-yu, even if you lose, you can still escape this disaster? Hihi, Jun Muyin, you're too naive. I advise you to take the Gu immediately. Maybe you'll still have the qualifications to compete with me, otherwise, you'll only die more unsightly." Saying that, she waves her hand. Immediately, a ghost envoy carries a small black goblet, handing it over to Muyin. Muyin has a smile that isn't a smile, not moving. "I said no need, so no need. Ghost King Liu only asked us to refine elixirs, He didn't say that we must take the Kai Gu to refine elixirs. That's not up to you. Shi Lanling gnashes her teeth. I don't care what kind of trick you're planning, but today, you have to eat this Gu. Even if you don't want to eat it, you still have to eat it. Come, stuff the Kai Gu into her mouth. I want to see how she can still be arrogant. Hearing that, the ghost envoy carrying the small goblet deftly grabs the little black bug inside. She also doesn't know what kind of special treatment is done to it. When the Gu touches his skin, it unexpectedly doesn't directly burrow inside, but remains quiet, like it's unconscious. That ghost envoy holds the Kai Gu, slowly approaching Muyin. As the Kai Gu gets closer and closer to Muyin, it suddenly seems to come alive, violently bouncing in the ghost envoy's hand. It's like Muyin's flesh and blood is fiercely attracting it. Liu Se's eyes brighten. Looking at Muyin, besides hatred, there's also a trace of suspicion. This is the first time she's felt her Gu being so excited. Even the mother Gu in her body seems to be affected, stirring restlessly inside her body. There's definitely something special in this woman's flesh and blood that's attracting them. Seeing that the pitch-black, frightening Gu is about to stick to Muyin's snow-white, sparkling skin. Muyin sneers, her fingertips slightly drawing a line in the air like a wave. In a split second, a silver light flashes, and there seems to be a faint hum of a zither. Then, there's only a piercing sound, and the Kai Gu that was still bouncing just a moment ago is cut into two in the blink of an eye. Almost at the same instant that the Kai Gu is severed, a blue flame sprays from the Gu's body. The Gu worm was burnt to ashes. Even the ghost envoy's fingers were burnt black, but he only reacted after a long while, letting out a blood-curdling scream. Shi Lanling has been waiting for Muyin's frightened expression after swallowing the Kai Gu. Who would have thought that it would be so easily resolved by this woman? Her face instantly twisted, and she roared in a stern voice, "Trash, what are you still standing there for? So many Kai Gu, I don't believe she can escape all of them. Hurry up and attack." When the ghost messengers heard the order, they rushed forward like a swarm of bees. Everyone was holding a Gu worm in their hands. Muyin chuckles and flips her wrist. In a split second, a simple and lustrous zither with a flowing luster appears in her hand. Her slender hands lightly plucked the strings of the zither. The music of the armored horses resounded throughout the hall. Sound blades shot out at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Mu Yang knows better than anyone that if these Gu worms fall to the ground, they will drill everywhere. Even if he was not afraid, the other doctors would definitely suffer. Therefore, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of the zither turns into blades, and 100 of them shoot out. Chapter 5:15. In the blink of an eye, the ghost envoys who had just fiercely rushed over, each and every one of them clutches their burnt hands and cries out in pain. And the Kai Gu that had just frightened everyone, after a short moment, has completely turned into fine powder. The whole audience is deathly still, everyone's eyes are focused on Muyin. The doctors are shocked, ecstatic. The ghost envoys are fearful, aghast. But Shi Lanling and Liu Se are completely and utterly in disbelief. Especially Liu Se. That terrifying face of hers is now completely twisted together. Those pair of turbid eyes seem like they're about to fall out of their empty sockets. "My Kai Gu. Jun Muyin, you slut, you killed my Shenji, and now you've even killed all my Kai Gu. Good, good. They can't let you take the Kai Gu, then let me personally feed it to you." As soon as her voice falls, Liu Se opens her mouth. The next moment, she sees an ugly black-red bug that's several times bigger than the other Kai Gu, crawling out of her mouth. Liu Se grabs that bug, and her figure suddenly turns into an afterimage, heading towards Muyin. This time, Muyin's expression becomes extremely grave. The Tianmo Qin in her hand stands upright, 5 fingers suddenly vibrating on the strings. The sound of the zither abruptly rises, like a hurricane engulfing the waves, rushing straight to the sky. Liu Se is almost about to rush in front of Muyin, but she suddenly feels her body colliding with an invisible wall. Her entire body was bounced away. The Shun musician's new second-level skill, divine hands weave the heavens. Through the sound of the zither, it drives the heaven and earth's vitality in the air, forming a protective barrier in a short period of time, exhausting all internal force or spiritual power within the body, lasting for 3 breaths. Liu Se is bounced back by that sound wall, and she continuously retreats 3 steps before she can stand firm. She suddenly looks at Muyin, her eyes filled with bewilderment. Jun Muyin is a musician? But such a powerful sound wall, is it really something that a musician of the Yenwu continent can achieve? A treacherous light constantly flickers in Liu Se's eyes. As she prepares to attack again, a voice suddenly rings out from outside the main hall. Ghost King Liu Se, what do you want to do to the future Dark Lord's wife? Before her voice falls, she sees Han Yi's figure walking out from the thick black fog. The poison smog wrapped around his body, but it didn't seem to have any effect on him. Han Yi goes straight to Muyin's side, and slightly bows towards her. Miss Jun, Di Jun said that he has something to take care of, and let this subordinate protect you first. Mu Yang sees that Han Yi is unscathed. Hearing his words, her heart immediately relaxes. As expected, Di Mingju and the others are safe and sound. Han Yi turns to look at Liu Se, his eyes cold. Ghost King Liu Se, you have offended your superiors, how should you be punished? Liu Se narrowed her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Shilanling immediately sneered. Apart from the Dark Lord that appeared when the Ghost City was just founded 1,000 years ago, no Dark Lord has appeared since then. You actually said that this woman is the future Dark Lord's wife. What a joke. Heh. Han Yi scoffs. He suddenly took out a black token from his bosom. The token looked very ordinary. There was no radiance or profound chi surrounding it. But as soon as the token appeared, the surrounding ghost envoys seemed to be possessed. Involuntarily, they knelt down and shouted, "Welcome, Supreme Nether." Even Shilanling and Liu Se didn't seem to be able to control themselves, and they kneel down. It's just that before Liu Se's knees completely hit the ground, she suddenly sobers up. Chapter 516. How is this possible? Didn't the Dark Lord's decree disappear 1,000 years ago? Han Yi says, now, do you still have any doubts about the existence of the Dark Lord? Liu Se's complexion turns green and white, her eyes are filled with dread, unable to say a word. Han Yi puts away the Dark Lord's decree, and the kneeling ghost envoys and Shilanling regain their freedom in a split second. Shilanling's eyes brighten all of a sudden, her face full of worship and infatuation. So Di Jun is the founder of the Ghost City, the Dark Lord. No wonder that man is so handsome and powerful. Making her deeply infatuated with him almost the first time she saw him. But as it happens, such a great man actually fancies Jun Muyin, this slut who has already lost her chastity. Instead, he humiliates and dislikes her in every possible way. No. It's not that the Dark Lord dislikes her, but because of Jun Muyin's interference, the Dark Lord misunderstands her. That's right, it's like this. As long as she gets rid of Jun Muyin, as long as she lets the Dark Lord clearly see Jun Muyin's fickle, dirty and ugly nature, she believes that the Dark Lord will definitely like her instead. Shilanling suppresses her excitement and stands up, suddenly saying in a loud voice, even if the Dark Lord's existence is proven, it still can't prove that this woman is the future wife of the Dark Lord. Moreover, Jun Muyin, you just promised me that you would compete with me in alchemy. Don't tell me you're going back on your word now. Muyin was originally still immersed in the fact that Di Mingju is actually the Ghost City's Dark Lord, not coming back to her senses. Hearing Shilanling's words at this time, she can't help but curl up the corner of her lips. That's right, I promise to compete with you in alchemy. If I win, I'll be allowed to treat the Ghost Lord's illness, isn't that right? She's answering Shilanling's words, but she's looking at Ghost King Liu Se. Liu Se nods, that's right, as long as you beat Shishenzi in alchemy and prove that you have the ability to treat the Ghost Lord, I will naturally let you in to treat the Ghost Lord. If Miss Jun can't refine dance, or can't even beat Shishenzi in alchemy, then it proves that you can't treat the Ghost Lord. Even if you're the Dark Lord's wife, you're still not qualified to treat the Ghost Lord. Mu Yang nodded, alright, then let's start the competition. Shilanling glares at her, faintly asking, you really won't take the Kai Gu and want to compete with me in alchemy? But isn't this too boring? Why don't we make a bet? I don't know if you dare or not, Jun Muyin. Mu Yang raises an eyebrow. Oh? What's the bet? Shalanling chuckled softly. It's just that this smile doesn't have the slightest bit of immortal elegance and otherworldliness. On the contrary, it's brimming with gloominess and maliciousness. If you lose, then cripple your own cultivation and marry that ghost slave at Ghost King Liu's side. Henceforth, you'll serve the ghost city forever. What do you think? Saying this, she pointed at the person behind Liu Se. Liu Se pointed at a man standing behind her. His clothes were also embroidered with the symbol of the ghost city, but it was different from the other ghost envoys. He's not a ghost envoy of the ghost city, but a ghost slave deployed by Liu Se. Almost everyone in the room had noticed him in some way. Because this ghost slave's appearance was extremely ugly, even comparable to Liu Se's. Chapter 5:17. What nonsense are you talking about? Han Yi suddenly explodes, roaring as he rushes towards the ghost slave and Shalanling. But Mu Yan pulls him back. From their conversation, Mu Yan knows that Han Yi and the others can't get too involved in the matters of the Yanwu continent. Even more so, they can't casually harm the people of the Yanwu continent, otherwise, they will suffer the backlash of heaven and earth. The doctors on the side also start cursing all at once. Shalanling, don't go too far. Competing in alchemy is just competing in alchemy. You actually came up with such an insidious scheme to trick a little girl, you still have no shame. I remember now. A few nights ago, Shalanling went to seduce the man naked. He must be Dr. Jun's husband. This person must be jealous of Dr. Jun, that's why he came up with such a despicable method. Little girl, you mustn't agree with him. At this time, Liu Se's gloomy and frightening face finally shows a smile. What? Isn't Miss Jun very confident in her alchemy level? Now you don't dare to gamble? Since Miss Jun also thinks that she will lose and doesn't have the guts to gamble, then I think it's better to forget about it. I just didn't expect that the so-called future Dark Lord's wife would turn out to be such a cowardly person, even throwing away the Dark Lord's face. Shalanling grits her teeth and sneers. Jun Mu Yan, who do you think you are? How could you be worthy of that person? Since you don't dare to gamble with me, I think you should obediently leave Dark Lord's side. A waste like you, how could you be worthy of Dark Lord? She hasn't finished speaking when a girl's low, sweet-sounding laughter suddenly resounds in the hall. This laughter makes Shalanling and Liu Se, who are in the middle of provoking her, stare blankly. Soon after, they see Mu Yan raise her head, her beautiful peach blossom eyes rippling with a mocking arc. You guys really have a lot of nonsense. It's just that, after talking for so long, you're only talking about what I should do if I lose. Shalanling, what if you lose? What price are you going to pay? Shalanling stares blankly at first, then she laughs out loud. I lose? You think I would lose? Jun Mu Yan, where do you get the confidence to think that I would lose to a waste who has never done alchemy? Mu Yang's expression is unspeakably calm. How do you know that I don't know alchemy? Haha, if you really know how to refine pills, you wouldn't have asked me to refine the golden pill of 9 orifices back then. Jun Mu Yan, do you think that you can bluff me? Do you take me for an idiot? On the side, Han Yi couldn't help but roll his eyes. If you're not an idiot, then who is? Mu Yan is still calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos. She says unhurriedly, since Shixianzi is so confident, then let's do it this way. If Shixianzi loses, I won't ask you to let the Kai Jiu suck your flesh and blood dry, to die so unsightly. I just want you to cripple your own meridians and never practice medicine or alchemy. What do you think? Shalanling's expression changed. Because Mu Yan's expression is really too calm, too confident. Could it be that this woman really knew alchemy? No. Absolutely impossible. The dark cloud spirit flower was so precious, and this woman wanted to attract the monarch's attention. If she really knew how to refine pills, why would she let him refine the golden elixir of 9 orifices? Moreover, in the ghost city, Jun Mu Yan's expression didn't seem quite right when she mentioned alchemy. She obviously didn't know how to refine pills. Chapter 5:18. The rules of the competition were simple. The Ghost Wind Valley provided 2 sets of exactly the same medicinal herbs. There should be as many types of medicinal herbs as possible, and most of them were valuable and rare medicinal herbs. Using these herbs, Muyin and Shilanling can almost refine any kind of elixir that they want to refine. Shilanling looks at Muyin contemptuously, and takes the lead to walk in front of the pill furnace. Her hands were slender and beautiful, but at this moment, her nails were dyed bright red with balsam juice. When he picked up the medicinal ingredients beside him and placed them into the pill furnace, his fingernails shone with sparks, as if his hands were stained with blood. It was exceptionally demonic. As the first and second herbs were sent into the furnace, Shilanling's movements became faster and faster. She didn't hesitate or pause in choosing the medicinal herbs and how much she put in. Even if those doctors hated her to the core, they couldn't help but marvel at her proficiency in refining pills. Just then, Shilanling turned her head to look at Mu Yang. Seeing that she still hadn't started and was staring at her, she couldn't help but sneer. "Jun Muyin, I thought you had some ability to think that you could beat me. So you were planning to secretly learn the pill condensation secret method while I was refining pills. Ha ha ha. Just give up. If the method of condensing pills could be learned so easily, it wouldn't be called a secret technique. Bitch, you're definitely going to lose today." Shilanling continues the movements of her hands as she presumptuously taunts Muyin. However, Mu Yang's expression did not change at all. He looked at Shilanling curiously. She was indeed curious. Logically speaking, alchemy required spiritual power to condense the pill. This was also the key point that she had figured out after her spirit root had been reconstructed. But in the Yenwu continent, there is no spiritual power. She really wanted to know what method Shilanling was going to use to condense the pill. After ridiculing Muyin for a while, Shilanling proudly sneers and no longer pays attention to her. Instead, he turned around and continued to concoct pills. As the flame was driven by her, the herbs began to merge. Finally, it was the last and most important step. Core formation. Why is this flame blue and green? Suddenly, the surrounding crowd exclaimed. This was because they discovered that after Shilanling injected profound qi into the pill furnace, the flames in the cauldron began to change color. Shilanling's skin also became increasingly sparkling and translucent as the pill fire changed color. Seeing this scene, Mu Yang slightly narrowed his eyes, his expression indescribably dark and gloomy. After a short quarter of an hour, a faint medicinal fragrance wafted out of the pill furnace and spread throughout the hall. The doctors, who are already worried about Muyin, are now even more restless. This smell? Could it be a high-grade third-grade medicinal pill? But it doesn't seem right. I once bid for a third-grade elixir in the Ghost City. This medicinal fragrance is even more mellow and enticing than a third-grade elixir. No, it can't be. It's even richer than a third-grade pill. Could it be a fourth-grade pill? Shilanling raised her chin and proudly stood up. Soon, a ghost slave came forward, opened the alchemy furnace, and took out 2 jade-white elixirs. Looking at the quality of the 2 pills and the medicinal fragrance they emitted, Yizichen's heart skipped a beat. All the doctors' faces turned ashen, and their eyes were filled with despair. 2 pills. She actually refined 2 pills in one go. This medicinal pill is only a high-grade third grade, right? It can't be the 4th rank, right? Chapter 519. Because if it's 3rd grade, then Muyin might still have a fighting chance. But if it's a 4th grade elixir, that's 4th grade. Even the best elixir that Master Jian Feng of the Heavenly Road sect can refine is only 4th grade. Moreover, the success rate isn't high. Usually, only one can be refined in one furnace. But Shilanling has refined 2 4th grade elixirs in one go. How could the doctors not feel despair for Muyin? Maybe it's because of that bet. This time, the one who comes forward to examine the elixirs isn't an ordinary ghost envoy. Instead, it's the ugly ghost slave at Liu Se's side. He steps forward in large strides, takes one of the elixirs and smells it, then carefully examines it. Soon after, he cracks his mouth, revealing yellow teeth. He laughs cruelly, a 4th grade vein shield Dan. Taking this elixir can withstand an all-out attack from an early pre-celestial practitioner. As soon as these words come out, the whole audience goes silent. Soon after, the ghost envoys burst into an uproar. It's actually a 4th-grade vein shield Dan, able to withstand an all-out attack from an early pre-celestial practitioner. That's a real life-saving elixir. Shixianzi is truly worthy of being the most famous genius alchemist in the Yenwu continent. She's only in her early 30s, yet she's already reached the level of a 4th-grade alchemist. It really leaves people in the dust. Exclamations of admiration rush towards Shilanling like a tide. Even those doctors who were just speaking ill of her, each and every one of them have pale complexions, their faces filled with despair. They can't say another word. Shilanling only feels that the resentment that she's accumulated over the past 3 days has been thoroughly vented in this moment. She darkly looks at Muyin and mockingly says, "Jun Muyin, you've been watching for so long, have you learned my secret method of pill condensation? Hehe, if you haven't learned it. Do you want me to demonstrate it to you again?" Muyin deeply looks at her, her eyes carrying a trace of understanding, a trace of astonishment, and a trace of pity. Shilanling seems to be infuriated by that trace of pity in Muyin's eyes. Her complexion suddenly changes, sneering, "What are you looking at? Jun Muyin, even if the drafts you refine are indeed first-rate, this is alchemy. Do you think you can learn it just by looking? If it was really that easy, there wouldn't be so few people in the entire continent who could concoct pills. I advise you to give up now. Don't waste our time. I see that the sky outside is about to brighten. Just in time, I can let Ghost King Liu preside over your wedding." The ghost slave on the side cracked his mouth again at the right time, looking at Muyin's eyes full of lust. Perhaps it was because his mouth was cracked wider this time, so not only did he reveal 2 rows of dark yellow teeth, but he also revealed the bright red flesh that was stuck in between his teeth. "Madam Enchantress, this servant is very much looking forward to being able to consummate our marriage with you." Han Yi couldn't help but unsheath the long sword in his hand. A cold chill filled the entire hall. "I dare you to say it again." The strong murderous aura made the ghost slave's face change, and he retreated to the side with a smile. At this time, Liu Se comes forward, saying with a smile that isn't a smile, "Han Yi Daren, there's no need to get angry. Miss Jun herself agreed to the bet. You wouldn't want to go back on your word when things come to a head, would you?" Saying that, he looks at Muyin, his gaze deep and serene. "Miss Jun, I advise you to obediently take the Kai Ji Yu if you really want to win. That way, you might still have a fighting chance." Chapter 520. Muyin's fingers gently pluck the Tian Mo Qin. There was a sudden clashing sound. A cold light flashes, and that Kai Ji Yu has already fallen from the air, splitting into 2 pieces. Disregarding Liu Se's unsightly complexion, Muyin waves her hand, and those 2 burning Kai Ji Yu immediately fly into the Dan furnace. It was one with the fire. She leisurely sat down in front of the pill furnace and unhurriedly threw the herbs into the furnace one by one. "Unhurriedly," he said, "whether I will lose or not, how will I know if I don't try?" Liu Se fiercely glares at Jun Muyin, there's an indescribable hatred in her eyes. Shilanling suddenly sneered, "I thought you had some kind of ability, turns out you really learned my alchemy from start to finish. Ha, I want to see how you're going to condense the pill in a while." As soon as he said that, everyone noticed. The herbs and quantities that Muyin has chosen are exactly the same as Shilanling's. This action caused the surrounding doctors to reveal anxious expressions. On the contrary, the people of the Ghost City are sneering one by one, full of disdain. So she really doesn't know how to refine pills. To actually dare to compete with Shixianzi in alchemy, he simply doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. "Lord Ghost Slave, you are so lucky. After today, such a lovely and charming woman will be yours." The ghost slave kept laughing, which made the faces of the doctors at the side pale. Finally, the processing and placement of the medicinal herbs were completed. Under the burning of the flames, the herbs began to melt. The next step was to inject Xian Qi and start to condense the pill. At least half of the people in the hall are waiting to see Muyin make a fool of herself. But to everyone's surprise, Mu Yang didn't place her hand in front of the pill furnace and pour her internal force into it. Instead, she picks up the Tian Mo Qin on the side, and begins to gently pluck the strings. Everyone was dumbfounded. They did not understand what she was trying to do. After Shi Lanling stared blankly for a moment, she suddenly laughed and said, "I've heard of playing the lute to a cow, but I've never heard of playing the lute to a pill furnace. Jun Muyin, don't tell me that you think that after hearing your zither music, those herbs will have a great spiritual nature and condense on their own?" Ha 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 ha. The people around Shi Lanling all laughed out loud. Almost everyone thinks that Mu Yang is struggling on her deathbed. He had never heard of anyone being able to refine pills through playing the zither. However, as the sound of the zither reverberated between heaven and earth, the flames in the cauldron jumped more and more fiercely. Furthermore, it was faintly emitting a crystal-clear silver light. As for the medicinal herbs that had originally melted, they actually began to show signs of solidification. How is this possible? How could he drive the alchemy fire to condense the herbs by playing the zither? Can't you feel it? Dr. Jun's zither music contains internal force. Could it really be possible to condense a pill through the sound of the zither? The arrogant smile on Shi Lanling's face froze in an instant. When the doctors saw this scene, all of them revealed looks of surprise and joy. I heard that Dr. Jun is also known as the music doctor because when she treats people, she can use the sound of the zither to expel the pain. I didn't expect her to be able to use the sound of the zither to refine medicine. This is really a marvelous skill, a marvelous skill. Shi Lanling unwaveringly stared at the slowly condensing pill in the pill furnace, her eyes about to split open. Impossible. How was that possible? How could this slut condense a core just by playing the zither? Before he could finish his sentence. Chapter 521. The Dan furnace seems to be unable to withstand some powerful energy, as it keeps trembling. Then, without waiting for everyone to react, there's a loud rumbling sound. The whole furnace bursts open, sparks flying everywhere. The people in the main hall are somewhat stunned for a moment. Shi Lanling's incredulous voice comes to an abrupt halt. After a moment of silence, she suddenly bursts into unbridled laughter. Ha ha ha, the furnace exploded, it actually exploded. Jun Muyin, you lost. She said, without the secret method of core condensation, just relying on internal force, how could Jun Muyin succeed? Just now, using the sound of the zither to drive the refining process, that slut was just bluffing. The doctors look at the broken pieces of the Dan furnace, each and every one of their faces is filled with despair. It's over, it's really over this time. Just now, they really thought that Muyin could succeed. But the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Only Muyin's expression hasn't changed in the whole audience, her fingers still gently plucking on the Tian Mo Qin. Vigorous internal force lingers at her fingertips, sending it to the Tian Mo Qin. There was also a streak of energy that could not be seen with the naked eye. As the internal force slowly seeps into the Tian Mo Qin. That's spiritual power. Haha, ghost slave, what are you still staring at? From now on, Jun Muyin is your person. Shi Lanling reveals a tyrannical smile, and sinisterly says, wait until her meridians are destroyed. How you want to play with her, how you abuse her, it's all your freedom. Hearing that, the ghost slave's pair of turbid yellow eyes shine brightly. His tongue licks his lips, his cheeks full of tiny particles tremble slightly because of excitement. Step by step, he walks towards Muyin. Madam Enchantress, a moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold. Since you and I are already husband and wife, I don't think we should wait any longer. Now, follow me to the bridal chamber. Get lost. You disgusting beast. Dr. Song suddenly steps forward, his body still tottering, but he suddenly releases his whole body's pressure. As long as I'm still alive, I won't let your dirty hands touch Jun Muyin. Several doctors risk their lives, wanting to stand in front of Muyin. But Han Yi's movements are faster than them. He unsheathed his sword and firmly pressed it against the ghost slave's chest. He sneered, if you have the ability, take another step forward. He actually dared to covet the future mistress of their polar domain. He was really tired of living. Liu Se sneers, Han Yi Daren, if you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. What are you doing? Even if you're the subordinate of the Dark Sovereign, you can't be unreasonable. If Dark Sun and Han Yidaran really want to use their power to oppress people, I'm afraid that from now on, Dark Sun's prestige in the Ghost City will completely vanish. Shi Lanling immediately echoed. Jun Muyan was the one who agreed to the bet. Are you going to go back on your words now that you've lost? The atmosphere on this side was tense, and everyone was ready to strike. Suddenly, Dr. Wang's exclamation came from the direction where Mu Yang was playing the zither. Pill condensation. She's still in the middle of pill condensation. The pill refinement isn't over yet. What? Are you kidding me? The pill furnace has already exploded. How can it still be condensing pills? This shout immediately attracted everyone's attention. No one believes that the pill furnace has already exploded, so it's still possible to continue refining pills. However, the next scene that comes into view subverts everyone's imagination. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.